Hey man, what up man? What's going on YouTube? Hey, Wednesday, January 29th. We got two best bets in today's video. We got a little bit of a bigger slate compared to yesterday's. Yesterday's slate was not very good to us. We're going to show you the recap here soon, but yesterday I had a lot of leans. A lot of the leans would have hit for you guys, but a lot of my official plays just weren't it, man. They were not it yesterday. But bigger slate today, two best bets. Let's get into it. Monday, we brought out the brooms with the sweep. Yesterday for Tuesday, we bring out the reverse brooms with the reverse sweep, man. Fred VanVleet doesn't get up near the volume. It seems like when I was watching that game, he shot like 1 for 6 to start off that game, and then he was just very passive the rest of the game. I leaned to Jalen Green over. Should have went with Jalen Green. Jeremy Grant doesn't get it done. He ends up getting hurt in that game. He was actually starting off that game pretty well. Gets hurt. And then in the VIP, we had Trae Young. I was just expecting Trae Young to eventually go over here. Had a decent spot. He lands around 21, 22 points, doesn't get it done. Reverse sweep, a little bit down for the week. But hey, man, we had a great Monday, bad Tuesday. You know what it means? Big bounce back. Now, I'm not going to lie. For this slate being 11 games today, having 11 games on, I don't really necessarily absolutely love a lot of plays. It's not a day where I see like 6 to 8 plays where I'm just like, you know what? I love all these. There's a lot of plays today and a lot of games that I'm not necessarily in love with. We're going to go over this first game, though. Raptors at the Wizards. Now, in this game, it does look like Kelly Olynyk is questionable. Could possibly be in this one. Alexander Sarr is also someone who's questionable. Now, if Alexander Sarr sits for the Wizards, I don't mind Jonas Valanciunas today in some way. Points, rebounds, assists, some way. If Sarr sits, because usually when he sits, he usually has some decent games. He gets up a decent amount of volume, even if he plays like 22 minutes. But I would only really like him if Sarr is out, and that's also a matchup based just against the Raptors. Not a great defense there. But this is not a game I love, man. Spread-wise, now, Raptors have been kind of picking it up. They are on a 4 or 5 game win streak here, and they beat some okay teams, but some of these teams also not the greatest. They beat the Magic right now, or at least 4 games ago, January 21st. The Magic had no offense. They still are kind of battling with their offense there. They beat the Hawks twice. Seems like the Raptors kind of own the Hawks over the last couple of years, and then beat the Pelicans. And the Pelicans, we can't say they're that great. Now, Wizards, are they great? Heck no. But they are returning home. They're on who knows how many games they've lost in a row. I see that they've at least lost 10 straight. So, do I want to back the Wizards here? Nope. But some player props there. Jonas Valanciunas, not a bad spot. Kyle Kuzma going off past game logs usually gets up a decent amount of volume versus the Raptors. But that's also because the Raptors, both these teams, will get up a decent amount of shots. It's just, can they hit any? I don't know. I feel like for this game, I'm not in love with anything. I really don't feel like playing Scotty Barnes. I always tell people this. I'm not big on playing player props against the Wizards. Yes, the Wizards are arguably the worst team in the NBA. I mean, easily, it's not even arguable. You could probably say that and probably feel pretty confident about it. But anybody could go off. I mean, you could have Davion Mitchell drop 8 assists today and 10 points, almost a double-double. You could have Jakob Poeltl drop 20 points. You could have Scotty Barnes drop 30. Anybody could go off. Bruce Brown could come off the bench today and drop 20 points. Not a spot I'm loving. I would be leaning the Raptors just because of how they're playing recently, but still, it is the Raptors. I'm not jumping up and down to want to play the Raptors here as a almost 7-point favorite on the road. Total about 231. I would probably be leaning the under. I always say this. The Wizards, the only time they don't get to the over is when the Wizards or the other team score 100 to 110 points. In my opinion, neither one of these offenses, I feel like you can rely on that much to where you expect them to both put up a decent amount of points. I'd probably be leaning the under there just because I could see one of those teams going out there and scoring 105 points today. And then I really don't see the other one going out there and putting up 130. Now, could that happen? Yep, but I'm leaning the under there. Moving on to the next game, Pistons at the Pacers. Pacers about 7-point favorites here, but I don't love the Pacers coming back from Paris. Neither the Pacers or the Spurs. We'll talk about the Spurs later. But coming back from Paris, I'm kind of staying away from it. And this is maybe just me being a little too hesitant or just playing it smart. I don't know. Take it however you want. But traveling that much, I mean, they did have about a 2-3 day rest here. But for me, there's only a couple guys I don't mind. Tyrese Halliburton's usually had some good games versus the Pistons. At home, he has played better this year. But every time I take Tyrese Halliburton, he sells. It seems like I would be leaning his over 2.5 threes only because at home, Pistons aren't the greatest versus pick and roll ball handlers. He hits that pretty well, but I don't love it. I don't love it. Miles Turner today, I feel like he would probably be my favorite guy today, and that's only because he shoots a lot of threes from the top of the key, and Pistons haven't been defending the interior that well, and they allow a lot of shots from the top of the key. So I think Miles Turner could have a decent game there. Earlier this year, didn't have too bad of a game versus them. I don't mind Miles Turner in a couple different ways today. So Him, and then I'm going to bring up Cade Cunningham versus the Pacers because high usage players, I say it. I feel like you guys should be taking some of these guys sometimes. High usage players versus the Pacers always smack, it seems like, on points or assists, if not points plus assists. Now, Cade Cunningham's assist today is at 9.5. I'm not loving it because I think, I almost like his points a little bit more at 25.5. You can get it at 25.5 there. I like it. I only see maybe one book that has it at 25.5. Most books have it at 26.5. I would still lean the over. Maybe you could hold off for 25.5. Maybe it drops down, but I feel like a lot of people are going to like Cade today because high usage players smack versus the Pacers, man. But nothing I'm loving in that game. Third game, Brooklyn Nets versus the Charlotte Hornets. Another garbage fest, man. Both of these teams, absolutely garbage. If you're loving either one of these teams, let me know down in the comments, man. But neither one of these teams do I want to back today. Nets, now it does look like they're going to be a little bit healthy. It does look like D'Lo's going to play. D'Angelo Russell's going to play. But they're still going to be now they're without Noah Clowney, who's been a decent role player for them. I'm not going to say he's a big name or anybody. If you haven't watched the Nets game, you probably don't know who he is. But he does play like a little bit of a stretch 3, stretch 4. Cam Johnson's going to be out, so it's basically going to be D'Angelo Russell, Zaire Williams, Nick Claxton, and then just some other role players, man. Hornets, they're going to be without LaMelo, so it's going to be Miles Bridges. I don't know how you can like anybody other than Miles Bridges. I feel like Miles Bridges could get up 30 shots today. He could hit all of his props just off of volume alone. Now, I don't love the Hornets here without LaMelo and without they're without Josh Green as well, without Cody Martin. They're also without Mark Williams. You got Taj Gibson starting at your 5. Like, Josh Okogie at your 3. Josh Okogie's a solid role player, don't get me wrong, but come on now. I would probably be leaning the Nets here, but it is a garbage fest. I don't like anything in this game, and I really don't think you should be either, unless if it's somebody that you want to take something like Miles Bridges because you think he just gets up a lot of volume today. We've seen when the Hornets have been banged up, when it's just LaMelo out there, when it's just Brandon Miller out there, and just Miles Bridges out there, those guys sometimes have games getting up 25, 30 shots. So as long as Miles Bridges has a decent game there, he could fly over his points, fly over some props there. But I don't want to trust that today. I'm just not in love with that. Next game, Cleveland Cavs versus the Miami Heat. Cleveland Cavs versus the Miami Heat. Now, I don't mind some player props in this game. Evan Mobley's back. The Cavs are getting a little bit healthier here, and I just don't know if I'm really trusting the Heat, man. I'm not trusting the Heat. So instead of talking about a bunch of player props that, I'm not like in love with really necessarily, I'm just going to give you my first best bet, and it is the Cleveland Cavs today, -7.5 versus the Heat, man. I like it. I feel like Cavs are finally getting a little bit back, or they're getting back a little bit healthy. Some of their losses here were against the Rockets and then against the 76ers there, but that 76ers team shot absolutely crazy that game, 51%, 54% from 3. I just don't see the Heat doing that. And Cavs losing to the Rockets, I did expect them to lose one of those games versus the Rockets. I did think they'd win the other one. But if you're looking at their losses, man, it's been against top teams. The Miami Heat are not top team. They are not a top team. Looking at their wins, yes, they did just win against the Magic. Not a bad win against Franz and versus Paolo. Had to go into double overtime to do it. They were down a lot in that fourth quarter, down in the overtime. Had to come back and play hero ball. Now they're coming off a double overtime against one of the best teams in the NBA that has been covering machines. The Cavs have been covering machines. They've covered 30 of 46 games this year. And if you're dating back, looking at some Heat games here over the last 10, yeah, they beat the Magic. Then they beat the Nets. Nets are one of the worst teams in the NBA. They got smoked by 29 versus the Bucks. Got destroyed lost to the Trailblazers by 9. They do beat the Spurs. Okay, decent win, I guess you could say, versus Spurs. But then face the Nuggets, a top team. Lose by 20. Lose to the Lakers by 9. Lose to the Clippers by 11. They do beat the Trailblazers? Cool. Trailblazers not a very good team, and then beat the Jazz by 5. Cool. Not a very good team, and the Jazz were without everybody in that game. So in the spot here, Cavs getting a little bit back healthy. Heat kind of have owned the Cavs over the last 5-6 matchup. If you're looking over the last 6 matchups between these two teams, the Cavs have only won one of them. But this year, this Cavs team is a lot different. And if you are looking when they matched up earlier this year, the Heat did beat them 122-113, but Evan Mobley ended up leaving that game early, only played 11 minutes, and the Cavs were on a back-to-back, and they were on the second game of a back-to-back. They're not on a bad spot today. I love the spot today for the Cavs. -7.5. I would play it up to -8, -8.5. Love the spot for them today. Moving right along to the Kings at the 76ers. Kings -9 today. Decent size favorite. 76ers do beat the Lakers yesterday. I leaned to the 76ers. I wish I would have taken them, but I ended up staying away from them. Total about 228. Kings have been playing very fast. I always say that, but the 76ers are playing very slow. If you just looked at that Kings matchup last game, they just faced the Nets. Guess who plays just as slow as them? The 76ers. So, in this game, I could see this game being another kind of total how it was with the Nets there. Now, 76ers this year on back-to-backs. Let's check on back-to-backs this year, how they've been playing. Because if I'm not mistaken, against Western Conference teams, they've been very, very bad this year. But on back-to-backs, Philadelphia is 3-4 ATS against the spread. But if you're looking at non-conference games, if I'm not mistaken here, they are absolutely dreadful. 3-12-2 against the spread in non-conference games. That's terrible. The Kings are about 500, 7-7-2, nothing crazy. But 76ers 3-12-2. Now, some of those games, who knows who was out. Joel Embiid could have even played in some of those games because everybody's in and out of that lineup. It's crazy over there. But on no rest, even to the over, it's not looking like super crazy here. But for the 76ers on no rest, 5-2 to the over. With how fast the Kings are playing, I could see this game going over. 228, I could see this game going over. But I just lean the Kings. I don't know if I can trust the 76ers here. I feel like Maxi's been going crazy here, playing really well. But I would honestly lean Maxi under just because if you take Maxi under today, it's not because you're confident in it. It's really not. It's because it's a high line and he's landing in that like 27 to 33 point range almost every game. So if you halfway like it, I don't know how you could really be in love with it. I just feel like you'd be hoping that he lands in that 28 point range. Just has a good game, but just doesn't get all the way there just because it's such a high line. Some other players here I'm going to bring up. Domantas Sabonis, I say it every game he's on the road. He has been smacking his points props on the road. I mean, if you look at his last 5-6 games, he's scoring over 20 points every single game. Now, 76ers, everyone wants to take every big man against them because the Sixers have no size right now. But AD yesterday, I hope people stayed away from AD yesterday because that man, I told you guys on a back-to-back, don't trust him. But Nikola Vucevic scored 22 points. I mean, I don't see how Domantas Sabonis can go out there and score 20-plus points today. De'Aaron Fox in some trade rumors. I mean, maybe he goes out there and has a decent game. I'd probably like De'Aaron Fox more over than DeMar DeRozan today. But nobody I'm really loving in that game. I would just be kind of leaning the Kings and maybe leaning the over there. That's kind of where I'm at within it. And if you like the over, you've got to be kind of hoping the 76ers put up some points there. So if you don't think they do, then I'd just be leaning the Kings there because I think they can cover that. Next game, Denver Nuggets versus the New York Knicks. New York Knicks about 3-point favorites here. And I mean, it's really hard, man. I feel like this is almost a coin toss, a flip of the coin, man, because Knicks, they have played really well last two games, putting up 143 points in the last two games, each game. I don't see them continuing that. Looking at the Knicks games this year, you hardly ever see them put up more than 130 points, 140 points in consecutive 3 games. It's hard for an NBA team to continue to put up 140 points back to back like that. So, yes, these teams did play earlier this year, and there was a huge scoring game. The Knicks beat the Nuggets 145 to 118. The Nuggets ended up shooting lights out in that game. They shot lights out in that game. But if you are looking this year, Nuggets have lost 2 straight games. Nuggets don't really lose more than 2 straight games. I lean the Nuggets here. I lean the Nuggets. I don't think the Knicks shoot near as well as they did last game when they faced off. And I lean some player props over. Jokic, lean a lot of his overs right now. He's balling. I mean, pick and choose which one you like more. I think Jokic could even go over his point line today. Jamal Murray, I think he could go over his point line today. And I say both of those, I like those guys overs or lean those guys overs, is because off a loss, those guys usually are the 2 players that usually always come back off a loss and put up some points. Just looking off their games this year off a loss and what they've been doing. Usually one of those guys or both those guys come out and hit these lines that they're set at today. Karl-Anthony Towns, I lean his over. Josh Hart, lean his over. Those are probably my 2 favorite point props that I would lean over there for those guys. Karl-Anthony Towns, I think, could have a solid game today. He's had a couple down games, but same thing. Just going off of how he's been playing this year, it's like he has one really monster game, a couple down games, maybe gets a lot of boards but doesn't put up a lot of points, and then another huge game, and then a couple down games, gets a lot of boards. Like, that's just kind of how he's been playing this year. If you're just playing it off that pattern, he's due for one. He's due for a good game here, and we all know that Nuggets interior defense gets smoked some games. Gets smoked. I mean, Rudy Gobert even had some decent game versus them. If you go look at centers versus the Nuggets, man, they have some big games there, or at least some guys that get in the paint there. It's another reason why I like Josh Hart. Josh Hart gets into the paint a decent amount, and the Nuggets play at a pretty fast pace to where Josh Hart, when he plays against teams that play at a top 10 pace, he's usually hitting this because Josh Hart gets out in transition, and that's where he kind of thrives. But second best bet here in this game, I'm taking the under 240 and a half. And you know what? Every single trend is telling me to take the over. Every single trend. If you're looking at literally any trend, the Nuggets off a loss, Nuggets versus Eastern Conference, Nuggets versus Western Conference, everything, man. Everything's telling me to take the over. Every single trend. And you know what? When I looked at this game first, I was like, I like the over. I lean the over. I just took the over in the Grizzlies-Knicks game. But the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm digging into it, the Nuggets off a loss, when they're facing a quality defense, not a defense like the Hawks or the Jazz, they're usually having totals in that 220 to 230 range. So off a loss, yeah, they do kind of hit the over, but it's usually against a scrub-a-dub defense and against a quality defense like the Warriors, some of these decent defenses that are middle of the pack. Knicks are kind of middle of the pack. They usually land in that 220, 230 range. And like I said at the beginning of this explanation of this game on who I like, the Knicks shot 61%, 53% from three. I don't see that happening again. I don't. The Nuggets, if you are looking over their last 7 road games, they are playing a little bit slower on the road than they are at home. At home, they're playing like top eight pace. On the road over their last little bit, they're about middle of the NBA, about 15, 16, 14 in that middle of the NBA range. I like the under. I mean, now this is not a guess or just, this is like a calculated opinionated guess, man, or pick here, because every trend's telling me to take the over. A lot more people are on the over, but the line's kind of moving the opposite way. Last night, this total was like 240 and a half, 241, and I even saw it on some books at like 238 not that long ago. So I feel like if it's in that 240 and a half range, I definitely would be leaning the under there. I just don't think those teams shoot near as well as they did last game. 5 more games to go over. Next game, though, is the Chicago Bulls at the Boston Celtics. Chicago, big underdogs here, 14.5-point underdogs. And I was like, you know what? How are the Celtics getting away with being these big of underdogs? And then I go and check out the injury report a little bit, and it does look like Zach LaVine is going to be out. No Zach LaVine, Kobe White, still day-to-day. He could be back. He is questionable. On the Celtics side, it looks like Al Horford, Jason Tatum, Sam Hauser, all those guys questionable as well. You guys know I love backing the Celtics off a loss. I tell you guys, that's the only time I would back them is off a loss. Well, they lost last game. Now, do I love them as a big favorite? Not really, because this year as a big favorite, they haven't really been covering. Now, if the Bulls had Zach LaVine and the Celtics were 14.5, even off a loss, I would probably tell you to stay away or to lean the Bulls. The Bulls without Zach LaVine, though, this year, they have been okay, but when they've been without Zach LaVine, it's been against a bad team like the Jazz, the Wizards, the Hawks. I mean, just really bad teams. Really bad teams. So they've hung in those games against those bad teams, but against the Celtics here at Boston off a loss, those trends are telling me I lean the Celtics. I lean the Celtics in this one. Now, if Tatum sits, I think this line could maybe drop a point or two, so maybe hold off. But I think I'm leaning the Celtics there. I still got to rock with them off a loss, and Bulls without their best scorer, and possibly their second best scorer. Now, Vucevic is probably their second best scorer, but Kobe White definitely, guard there, is definitely one of their best scorers as well. But that's how I'm feeling about that game. Player props, not loving it because I think you got to wait for some injury news, at least with that Celtics side on Tatum, because Jaylen Brown, he always seems to ball without Tatum in the lineup. But there's nothing I'm really in love with. I mean, I've watched the Celtics go out there versus the Bulls and not play very well. But I've also seen them go out there and put up a lot of points. That was another lean I did have in that game that I forgot to mention, was the team total over for the Celtics. Team total over for the Celtics. When they have been off a loss and been big favorites like this, they might not always cover, but they usually end up putting up a lot of points. So maybe you even lean the over in that game. But Celtics team total would probably be even more of a favorite lean more than the Celtics minus 14.5. But still staying away from that game, not in love with it. It's my Celtics. I'm not taking any props for them unless if I absolutely love something and I'm not in love with anything. So 4 more games to go over. Dallas Mavs at the New Orleans Pelicans. Pelicans only 1-point underdogs here, 1.5-point underdogs, and I think honestly for good reason. But last night the Mavs were like -3. This line's dropped a little bit. I feel like the total has creeped up about half a point or a point since last night as well. I was first about to lock in the over. I was about to lock in the over, but the Mavs, man. I mean, the Pelicans. The thing that has me leaning the over is the Pelicans' defense right now is allowing every team to score 115, 120 points. Like every team. So that's what has me leaning the over. But when you look at the Mavs' offensive efficiency recently, it has not been that great. Like their offensive rating on the road recently, if you're looking last 15 or last couple road games here, let's check it out. They have the third worst offensive rating in their last 6 road games. In their last 6 road games, they're 1-5 with an offensive rating of 105.4. Only the Wizards and the Magic have a worse offensive rating. Now their defense isn't bad. Their defense is about middle of the pack, about top 10. So that's kind of why I'm like, Pelicans allow a lot of points. But if the Mavs stay in this game, I could see this kind of creeping under, being like a 112 to 116 type of final, or 108 to 114. Like I could see it being a little bit lower scoring there. But Pelicans with Zion, they've been having higher scoring games. So some differing opinions there on my side to where I ended up staying away from it. I don't love the Mavs here though. I really don't. Pelicans, they're kind of up. I mean, that's every NBA team, I guess you could say, but they've shown some flashes with their Zion, all their guys healthy, Trey Murphy, CJ McCollum. When those guys have all been in lineup, they've shown some flashes, but they've also shown those flashes against the Jazz, against the Bulls, against the 76ers. Mavs, definitely better than those teams, even without Luka, but you also got a lot of injury news with them. Dwight Powell's out, Derek Lively's out, Maxi Kleba just broke his foot, so he's out. Najee Marshall looks like he's questionable. So if all those guys are out, I lean the Pelicans. If all those guys play or some of those guys play that are questionable, I lean the under, but it's just, I mean, dude, these games coming up to All-Star break here are not my favorite. I have not been really enjoying some of them. Some slates have been awesome. Some slates I've been loving it. But today's slate for being 11 games, not my favorite here. Next game, Clippers at the Spurs. Clippers at the Spurs. I'm going to tell you right now, I lean the Clippers. These guys met up earlier this year. Spurs destroyed the Clippers, but the Clippers were on a back-to-back. Clippers on the road this year, though, they have been a little bit worse defensively on the road compared to at home. At home, top 3 defense, top 2 defense, top 1 defense. Like them and the Thunder, right there, man. They are right there. But Clippers on the road, definitely take a dip. If you're looking over their last 7 road games, they have the 18th. They're ranked 18th in their defensive rating. At home, they're like top 2, top 3, like I said. But in this spot here, Clippers they got Kawhi, man. They got Kawhi. The spread last game was the Spurs minus 3.5, and if I'm not mistaken, in that game, yeah, the Clippers were on a back-to-back there. Now they got Kawhi. I like the Clippers, man. Spurs traveling from Paris, big emotional spot there for Wemby and some guys. Now coming back. I know the Clippers haven't been near as good on the road, but it's a close spread. I like them to win this game. If you're scared of the spread, only being about 3-4 points, hey, I still would lean the Clippers there. Player props, I honestly didn't look at many because once I saw the spread at this spread, I was like, I just like the Clippers. So big heavy lean there to the Clippers. If you're rocking with that, some player props, I apologize. I just didn't really look at much today. Hit me up in the comments if you have any questions on some player props, and I'll check them out for you guys. If you hit me up in the comments, wanting to know about anybody, I'll definitely get you some stats or go check it out for you. But at this time, I like the Clippers right there. So that's where I'm at with it. That is where I'm at with it. Next game, Minnesota Timberwolves versus the Phoenix Suns. Minnesota's kind of owned the Suns, but that was a lot of those games were in the playoffs. If you look in the regular season, the Suns have played the Timberwolves pretty well. In this spot here, Suns have won 3 straight, but I mean, you guys hear me say it all the time, man. I can't trust the Suns, but also we've watched this Timberwolves team this year. They have kind of picked it up. They've won 3 straight. Their 2 losses, their 2 most recent losses were against the Grizzlies at Memphis, makes sense, and then against Cleveland, makes sense. Like those are 2 of the best teams. They also lost to Memphis and the Warriors, but in that game against the Warriors, they lost by 1. I feel like I want to lean the Timberwolves here. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt and just be like, hey, you're the better team. You can't trust the Suns ever. The Suns' most recent wins are against teams like the Wizards. Yeah, they beat the Clippers, but the Clippers aren't as good as on the road. But still, today I do like the Clippers. The Suns beat the Nets, the Pistons, the Wizards, the Hornets, the Jazz, the Hawks. Some of those defenses are really bad. Some of those teams are really bad in general. I got to lean the Timberwolves, but Some of these guys, like Devin Booker, has had some monster games versus the Timberwolves in the past. Kevin Durant's had some good games versus them in the past. It's always hard for me to want to go against KD and Devin Booker, even though I say every time I talk about them that I can't trust them as a team. I can't. But those guys usually have some spots where they go up against a team where they just usually smack. Devin Booker, I would lean his assists over, even his PRA over. Rudy Gobert maybe would lean his points over, rebounds over, just because in the spot today versus Nick Richards, they've been allowing a decent amount of rebounds. Anthony Edwards is Anthony Edwards. If you want to rock with him, rock with it. Julius Randle, I did look at him today. He's had some monster scoring games versus the Suns. And when he faces up KD versus KD, he has some monster scoring games. I lean Julius Randle over PRA, mainly his points there. Unless if you really are in love with Ant and you want to take Ant. But that's really all I'm liking in that game. I would lean the Timberwolves, but very, very small lean. Maybe we would even lean the under, but once again, you're going up against Ant, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker. Those guys could get hot. One of those guys drops 40, and it's really hard for that total to go under. So I can't tell you to take the under because any of those guys could go off, have a really good game, and it's shooting that game over. So small lean to the Timberwolves, not loving anything in that one. Last game on the board, Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Warriors. 10-point favorite here for the Thunder. Thunder off a win here against the Trailblazers on Sunday was when they last played. So they're on like a 2-3 day rest here. And they have not been bad on a 2-3 day rest, if I'm not mistaken here. The Thunder. Actually, 3-5-1 against the spread off a 2-3 day rest. If you're even dating back that to last year, take these stats with a grain of salt here, but I'm doing it in real time for you. Oklahoma City Thunder, 12-12-2. 12-12-2 against the spread on 2 to 3 day rest since 2023. Nothing crazy, but these teams always play competitive, man. They always play competitive with each other. 2 of their last 4 games have went into overtime. Now, I would say Warriors this year aren't the same team as they were past couple years, but still, it's a matchup the Warriors seem to always show up in. Steph Curry always balls out versus the Thunder. Now, Steph Curry recently has been not playing real well. But his point line today is at 21.5. That is extremely low. Now, is it too low? Did the books drop it too much? Could you take advantage of taking the over? Or are they almost telling you, bro, I feel like that's a big drop. When have you ever seen Steph Curry at 21.5 points? Unless if he's off an injury. It's very rare. Very, very rare. And he's not off an injury. I think they were just resting him yesterday. So, very weird line there for Steph. It could be too weird. But he has monster games versus the Thunder. So, however you want to take that, man. If you want to take him there, rock with it. Now, Isaiah Hartenstein, I would be leaning his over here. He had a pretty decent game versus the Warriors earlier this year. He did just come back from injury. He played 32 minutes, though. First game back after missing about a couple games there. I would be leaning his over, but also Warriors, sometimes they go with like if Trace Jackson Davis isn't playing, they'll go with like a small ball lineup to where maybe Hartenstein isn't out there playing a lot. So Hartenstein, I don't know if he'll go out there and really play 30-some minutes today. I mean, he usually plays decent minutes, but you get my point. Like, they could go out there with a little bit of a small ball lineup and not play Trace Jackson Davis as much. And then, Hartenstein's not going to be out there if they're playing a bunch of small ball. But they do got Kevon Looney, though, still. They still got Kevon Looney. So, yeah, Hartenstein, I'd be leaning is over there. Hartenstein probably be one of my favorite overs there. Jalen Williams, without Draymond, I would be leaning Jalen Williams, but I think you can maybe wait off and maybe even get 18.5 for him. But in this game, I don't know if the Warriors should be underdogs of 10. I feel like the Warriors as an underdog here, it's really hard to want to go up against the Thunder, but just off of past years, these games are always competitive. Always competitive. But Steph's kind of playing a little down right now. If Steph was kind of in a hot rhythm right now, playing well over his last 10, I would say, hey, I like the Warriors plus 10. But Steph's kind of been cold recently. He hasn't been as consistent this year. So for me, I'm kind of staying away from it. But if you like the Warriors, I understand why. I would understand why. Total at 227, I'd probably lean the under. I think Thunder this year on the road have been playing a little bit more lower scoring games compared to at home. And Warriors this year, it's hard to back some of their scoring, man, especially against that Thunder defense that is definitely top 2, top 3 in the NBA. So lean the under there. But, hey, 11-game NBA slate, definitely not my favorite. Only 2 best bets today. I do have 2 more in the VIP. If you guys want to rock out in VIP, it'll be a link in the description. Every thing for the Discord's completely free. You can pop in the Discord. We got over a couple thousand members over in the Discord, so check it out over there, man. But not my favorite slate for being 11 games. I got to be honest with you. But if you guys are liking anything in this game, maybe I missed something, maybe you have a question about a team, get in the Discord or let me know down in the comments what your favorite play is, or what maybe I missed out on a play, maybe I'm missing out on a team today on a great spot for them and I just didn't catch it. But let me know. But those are the teams I'm rocking with. Some leans, but not really any crazy leans even today. More just liking the games, a couple games that I do have the best bets on. Those are the ones I'm really liking, and that's just kind of what I'm rocking with. For being 11 games, I only have 4 total bets in VIP as of right now. Maybe I'll add something a little bit later, but right now that's all it is. But hey, let's get a little bounce back to yesterday. Drop a like on the video. It helps me on the algorithm, man. I greatly appreciate you guys tuning into the videos every day. Let's bounce back, man. Bounce back, bounce back, bounce back. I'll see you guys back here tomorrow. Let's go.